Today, more than 100 flood warnings in place across Britain as the second day of Storm Bert takes hold. A major incident is declared in South Wales. Residents of Pontypridd are flooded out of their homes. The same thing happened to them 4 years ago.
Their belief is that because they've got flood defences in place, that the flood defences work. But as you've probably seen yourself, the flood defences don't work.
Deal finally at the climate summit in Azerbaijan, but there's still strong disagreement over whether richer nations are doing enough. As MPs prepare to vote this week on the controversial issue of assisted dying, clergy from several faiths speak out against. And
that man has hit the jackpot in Vegas tonight.
Viva Verstappen as he wins his 4th Drivers' Championship under the lights in Vegas. Good afternoon. Storm Bert has continued to wreak havoc on parts of Britain for a second day, with residents in South Wales once again flooded out of their homes after being severely hit by flooding 4 years ago. Yellow weather warnings for wind are still in place in many areas across the UK, and there have been gusts of up to 76 miles per hour in Somerset today. Wales has been particularly badly hit. Police searching for a dog walker who went missing have found a body. There are over 50 flood warnings in place. In Pontypridd, a major incident has been declared after the River Taff burst its banks. Well, let's go live to our correspondent Dan Johnson, who's in Pontypridd for us now. Dan.
Yes, this is the River Taff, which is still high. The water levels across South Wales are high. The rainfall is still heavy. There have been high winds. It's causing all sorts of issues out on the roads and to people's homes. They reckon up to 300 homes across South Wales have been flooded. That is why the emergency services this morning declared a major incident. There are still many emergency teams out trying to help people avoid that flooding or be rescued from it and to keep people safe out on the roads. In North Wales, a 75-year-old Brian Perry, who was reported missing in the River Conwy yesterday, they have found a body in that search. So these floods, this storm, are claiming lives and putting others at risk. And this river is still a raging torrent tonight. Across South Wales, water levels are high, rivers have burst their banks and homes are flooded, bringing misery for people who've in many cases been hit for a second time.
Didn't have enough time to move the van and move my car. By the time I got back, it went from the foot to the meter, and I only took it around the corner, so within 5 minutes it went shoof, gone up the meter.
What time was this?
This was at 9:05.
Paul has lived by the River Taff in Pontypridd for more than 20 years. It's the second time in 4 years her home's been underwater.
Because their belief is that because they've got flood defences in place, that the flood defences work. But as you've probably seen yourself, the flood defences don't work.
This is the desperate effort to try to stop the river water getting back into these houses. At the moment, they are winning, but the fear is the river level will rise further because the rain keeps coming down. In parts of Wales, a month's worth of rain has fallen over the last 24 hours. It's been a very busy time for the emergency services, who declared a major incident this morning when they were inundated with calls. And listen to the local council leaders' assessment of how well this rainfall and its impact were forecast.
We took the decisions ourselves to step up our resources and to have the depots open and crews in. But you know, even as bad as things were this morning, unless I've missed it, because I've been out since 5:30, and I don't know if an amber warning was issued. I certainly haven't seen it, and I'm surprised actually there wasn't a red warning, because during Storm Dennis we did see an amber warning well in advance and a red warning issued in the early hours. So I do think that'll need to be reviewed, certainly.
Some of the water from Welsh hills flows into England. This was Tenbury Wells in Worcestershire, where a wall collapsed and the river burst through. Landslides have affected a couple of roads, and coal tips are being checked to make sure they're not unstable. It's been a very difficult day for everyone here, and it's still a really nervous time for people right across the valleys. And there is huge frustration and worry for people who've been flooded time and time again. They say the flood defences that were improved after Storm Dennis 4 years ago have not worked, have not kept their homes dry. There is huge frustration and anger about how they have been hit once again, that so many rivers have burst their banks, that so many homes have been flooded. There is a risk to life, and you heard the council leader there saying he was surprised that a red warning hadn't been declared by the forecasting authorities. So it's not just people who are concerned by what they are seeing. The emergency services are stretched. They are pleading with people not to be out on the roads. There is a sense that the worst may now have passed, but it is still raining, and there is still more rainwater to come down off the hills, and as it's funneled into these valleys, it still poses a risk.
Thank you very much. Dan Johnson reporting for us there. Now, after days of talks and 30 extra hours of bitter wrangling, the COP29 climate conference finally agreed a deal in the early hours of the morning in Baku. The world's richest nations pledged more than $300 billion a year by 2035 to help poorer nations deal with climate change and develop without needing to rely on fossil fuels. But despite the amount being 3 times the current existing pledge, some developing nations criticise the deal as insufficient. Here's our climate editor, Justin Rowlatt.
It was in the early hours of this morning when the key text was agreed. To huge applause from the room. But some delegates from developing countries were angry. And just listen to how that went down in the room.
I regret to say that this document is nothing more than an optical illusion. This, in our opinion, will not address the enormity of the challenge we all face. Therefore, we oppose the adoption of this document.
That the developing country is saying that it's taking the lead with $300 billion till 2035 is a joke. And it's not something we should take lightly.
At the same time, there was an effort by a group of fossil fuel-rich countries, led by Saudi Arabia, to water down a promise made at last year's COP conference to transition away from fossil fuels. The final deal here includes both a $300 billion a year commitment to helping developing countries tackle climate change and that strong language on cutting emissions.
I'm very pleased that we've got this deal through. It's the right thing for Britain. It's the right thing for speeding up the clean energy transition, which is good for Britain in that it will help protect us against climate change, and that's the right thing to do. And it will also help generate jobs and growth for people in Britain. It's an 11th hour deal.
Some people are saying this deal isn't generous enough, that developed nations are dodging the debt they owe the developing world. Others are saying it shows that despite the divisions, despite Donald Trump threatening to pull America out of the process, the world can come together in this cooperative UN effort to tackle the existential threat of climate change. Justin Rowlatt, BBC News, Baku.
Senior faith leaders representing Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus and Sikhs have warned that vulnerable people could be left feeling they have a duty to die if this week's vote on allowing assisted dying in England and Wales is passed. 29 religious leaders signed the letter published in a Sunday newspaper. Parliament will debate the issue on Friday, with MPs given a free vote. Here's our political correspondent, Hannah Miller.
Ahead of a week in which Parliament will make a decision that is one of the most profound it will ever face, some faith leaders are urging MPs not to give terminally ill people the right to die.
I'm very concerned that as it stands, the bill does not have sufficient safeguards to ensure that no one can be pressurised into choosing an early death, either because they feel a burden themselves or potentially that they're caused to feel a burden by others.
A letter signed by 29 senior figures, including the Bishop of London, the Roman Catholic Cardinal Archbishop of Westminster and the Chief Rabbi, says, "Our pastoral roles make us deeply concerned about the impact the bill would have on the most vulnerable, opening up the possibility of life-threatening abuse and coercion." They add, "A right to die could all too easily end up in feeling you have a duty to die." The bill only applies to terminally ill people who have mental capacity and are thought to have less than 6 months to live. 2 independent doctors and a judge would have to agree a person satisfies the criteria and has not been coerced. A doctor would prepare the substance, but the individual would have to take it themselves. Those who support the bill insist the safeguards are some of the most stringent in the world.
I believe in giving people as much power, say and control as possible over the things that matter to them most. And I believe the bill has the right safeguards to make sure that that can be done properly.
One shadow minister who saw his mother die in distressing circumstances agrees.
There has been a good discussion on this, a good debate on this. It's important that debate continues on Friday when we discuss it. But if you ask the public, if people express a view, about 80% of the public say they would like this choice.
But others have expressed concerns about whether the state can be trusted with the responsibility of assisted dying.
Those people who are sat in care homes now who feel protected with the arm of the state around their shoulders, knowing they are protected, who will feel incredibly vulnerable the moment this passes into law.
Even if this vote passes on Friday, there will be months of further debate and scrutiny before it becomes law. But this week will tell us whether Parliament supports the principle of assisted dying, and that is one of the most consequential decisions MPs can take. Hannah Miller, BBC News, Westminster.
A number of unidentified drones have been spotted over 3 US air bases in Britain. Our defence correspondent Jonathan Beale is here with me. What's going on, Jonathan?
Well, US Air Force has confirmed that there were multiple drones flying at 3 sites in East Anglia, military bases they use here in the UK. One of those was RAF Lakenheath, where US fighter jets are based in Europe. And we do know that there were a number of drones. They're not saying exactly how many. They say they varied in size and numbers over 3 days, from Wednesday to Friday. What we can say is this does not appear, it does appear to be coordinated in some sense, that clearly it's not one person acting on their own. Multiple drones over 3 consecutive days, all at 3 US military sites. We can also say it's not isolated, because something similar happened in the US at Langley Air Force Base last December, over 17 days, multiple drones seen. We've also heard reports of drones being spotted at European military sites and civilian airports in recent months too. Now, who is behind this? Nobody is pointing the finger of blame at the moment. What we can say is that Western intelligence officials have been warning in recent months of increasing Russian cyber attacks, surveillance and sabotage operations. That will be a concern, but we still don't know who is behind this.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. The presenter and broadcaster Lauren Laverne has been given the all clear after treatment for cancer. She says she'll be back to work on The One Show on Tuesday. The presenter, who also hosts Radio 4's Desert Island Discs and BBC Radio 6 Music's Breakfast Show, revealed her diagnosis in August, saying at the time that her cancer had been caught early. Time for all the sport now. Here's Karthi Gnanasegaram at the BBC Sports Centre. Hi, Karthi.
Hi, Rita. Thank you very much. England's men are aiming to salvage some pride after losing 5 games in a row. They're playing Japan in their last Autumn Nations Series game, with the added twist that the former England head coach Eddie Jones is now in charge of the Japan team. Well, England are leading 35-7 at half-time. Earlier, Scotland had a statement, 27 points to 13 win over Australia, as Andy Swiss reports.
You could hear the expectation. Could Scotland end their year on a high against an in-form Australia? Well, Murrayfield hoped, and it was certainly rewarded. Sione Tuipulotu was actually born in Australia, but he has a Scottish grandmother, Jacqueline, and there she was to celebrate as he bulldozed Scotland into a 7-3 lead at the break. And after it, they were soon racing clear, thanks to one of rugby's most ruthless finishers. The dazzling Duan van der Merwe once again unstoppable, as indeed was Josh Bayliss. He had no right to score from there.
Bayliss going! Oh, he might have done it!
And yet somehow he did. But if that was good, the hosts saved their best till last, as Finn Russell rounded things off in style. A statement win for Scotland and for Murrayfield, an afternoon to remember. Andy Swiss, BBC News.
Liverpool have an 8-point lead at the top of the Premier League after a 3-2 win over Southampton. Mo Salah scored 2 of Liverpool's goals as they came from behind to take all 3 points. Ruben Amorim's first match in charge of Manchester United got off to the perfect start. Marcus Rashford giving them the lead at Ipswich Town in the 2nd minute of the game. It is still 1-0 to United with just over half an hour gone. Leicester City have sacked their manager, Steve Cooper, after just 5 months. The club is in 16th place in the Premier League. And Chelsea are 5 points clear at the top of the Women's Super League after a 1-0 victory over Manchester United. Guro Reiten converted a first-half penalty to take her goal tally this season to 6 in the WSL. To Formula One, and Max Verstappen has won a 4th consecutive World Championship. The Red Bull driver needed to finish ahead of title rival Lando Norris today, and Verstappen did just that, as another British driver, George Russell, won the race in Las Vegas. Patrick Geary reports.
Once again, there's no stopping Verstappen. Max on top of the world for the 4th time in a row. Even in Las Vegas, he had no need to gamble. 5th on the grid, such was his lead in the standings.
It's lights out and away we go.
He could allow others to do the racing. British driver George Russell led from the off. Verstappen never challenged. His job was to keep title rival Lando Norris behind him, even if the likes of Lewis Hamilton sped past. Hamilton would end up second, but even when surrounded by the bright red of Ferrari, Verstappen stayed cool on these neon streets. At Red Bull, there has been discord and disruption. It hasn't mattered. And so while Russell was the winner,
It is victory in Vegas.
16.5 seconds later, Verstappen was the champion.
On the season 4 times. Thank you so much, guys.
There's a lot of pressure on everyone, to deliver and do their job. Like they always want to win, they want to do the best they can, and when you have tough moments, it's not easy. But we pulled through, and it's definitely an incredible feeling, to be sitting here and be crowned champion.
Today, he let others do the spectacular. In the city of excess, this was the triumph of glorious consistency. Patrick Geary, BBC News.
England's women's cricketers have beaten South Africa by 4 wickets in their first T20 match in East London. Nat Sciver-Brunt top scored for England with 59 runs as they reached their target of 143. It was their first game after a disappointing group stage exit at last month's World Cup. And that's all from the BBC Sports Centre for now, Rita.
Kathy, thank you. And that's it from us. But the news continues here on BBC One as we join our colleagues across the nations and regions for the news where you are. Bye-bye.